Controversy over where de-icing chemicals from Ford Airport should wind up. For years, it's flowed into Trout Creek to the point where there are barely any fish left. Now the airport wants to start piping the fluid to a treatment center and then let it run into the Thornapple River. But what about the other side of the airport? While the airport says its plan will also help protect Plaster Creek, Target 8 uncovered that nobody really knows just how dirty that creek is. In fact, no one's even tested the water there until we did this week. Target 8 investigator Ken Kolker is live where a meeting will happen to discuss the proposal tonight. He has those Plaster Creek test results.
Now, we tested the water at 3 spots on the tributary to Plaster Creek. One was directly across the street from the airport. Even though it's been about a month since propylene glycol de-icer was last used at the airport, we found that it was still in the water. We actually tested the water in Plaster Creek just the other day and sent it to a lab.
I'd like to see those results if you'd share them with us so that we could take a look at it and run it by our experts.
We found trace amounts of propylene glycol, 14,000 parts per billion, across Patterson Avenue from the airport. We also checked a short distance downstream, found trace amounts of the organic compound there. And more than a mile away at 52nd Street in East Paris, lesser amounts. The last 2 spots with levels too low to accurately measure.
First of all, we have not been notified by DEQ of any violations in Plaster Creek.
None of the levels made the water unsafe to drink on their own, not even close. But in the first 2 spots, the water is murky and it smells bad, especially right across Patterson from the airport.
It's noxious. It's what we call anaerobic. It's without oxygen, so it smells just almost equivalent to a degraded outhouse from the 1970s.
An environmental consultant hired by Thornapple River neighbors says that our findings show a need for testing on Plaster Creek and stronger enforcement by the state. His question, why was it allowed to get this bad?
This is a very big surprise that there hasn't been more work done to assess the issue and clean it up.
He says the state would have issued violations, fines, and orders to stop dumping and to clean up if this were coming from a private company. Propylene glycol is bad for streams because it depletes oxygen in the water.
The aquatic community relies on oxygen being in the water column just to survive.
Dixon says it's also a carrier for other nasty stuff like oil and gas. We're near the headwaters of this tributary to Plaster Creek, right across the street from the airport. And as you can see on the surface of the water, there's this sheen, though it's not clear exactly where it came from or what it is. The state for years has allowed the airport to release its de-icer along with millions of gallons of stormwater, much of it into Trout Creek to the east and some of it into the Plaster Creek tributary to the west. But the DEQ in 2010 ordered the airport to stop sending it down Trout Creek because glycol was creating a biofilm and leaving a stream without fish. The deadline, October 2015.
I'm committed to doing our part and doing whatever we can to ensure that those creeks are maintained in a environmentally sensitive and in a quality way.
The plan is to pipe the diluted glycol through a natural filtration system, then to the Thornapple River.
I feel strongly that it will definitely meet DEQ standards and most likely exceed those standards.
They say it would eliminate all but 7% of the glycol, with about 6,500 gallons still reaching the Thornapple every winter. A plan opposed by some who live along the Thornapple. But airport officials say their proposal will stop it from flowing down both Trout Creek and that Plaster Creek tributary. At least one environmental group says it supports the airport's plan, though there is not yet a proposal to clean up the creeks once the glycol stops flowing.
We are very supportive of what the airport has done to date. What those next steps may be, I can't speak to those.
Now, a DEQ spokesman said that the glycol is not a threat to humans. He also said it was unfair to say that they've given the airport special treatment. He said that the DEQ has paid more attention to Trout Creek because problems there were noticed several years ago. And he said they didn't notice a problem on Plaster Creek, that tributary, until this past March. Live in Cascade Township, Ken Kolker, 24 Hour News 8.
Thornapple River residents are meeting with the DEQ and airport officials at 6:30 tonight at the Cascade Township Library. Target 8 investigator Ken Colker will be there and will question officials about Plaster Creek, and we'll show you what happens tonight on your 24-hour News 8 at 11.